Just want to update you on a few things. First of all, the budget. We are close, but we're not there yet. The potential of an appeal remains. The deadline for filing our appeal is November 13th. That's a 30-day window as provided in state statute from the time the mayor signs the budget, which was on October 13th, so therefore November 13th is the deadline to file our appeal with the Florida Cabinet. As you know, the $10.7 million funding is supposed to be on the County Commission agenda for November 9th. That would only give us 4 days in which to prepare an appeal. So our staff is going forward and working on preparing that appeal to the Florida Cabinet. It's basically an application process that requires a lot of documentation and financial statements, financial information. So our finance staff is working on that as if we were appealing with the possibility that we would have to appeal. Again, the potential for an appeal remains, depending on what the County Commission does on November 9th. The appeal will be completed, the application will be completed by November 8th, and then depending what happens on November 9th, November 10th, we would be prepared to carry it to Tallahassee and present it to the Florida Cabinet. The part about the Federation of Public Employees looking at spreading out the impact of this over a 3-year period, 1%, 1%, 1% is still in the works, but we have not been given a final decision on that yet. It has to be presented to the membership. They have to vote on it and ratify that. And we're anticipating their decision because that will have an impact on how much the County Commission is exactly going to have to fund retroactively for last year, the current budget that we're in, and then going forward. I'm encouraged by the progress, but I say, like the movie, show me the money, and show it to me now. Commissioner Rodstrom asked it succinctly at the Commission budget hearing, where's the money going to come from? Commissioner Jacobs said, well, Bertha Henry has done amazing things by pulling things out of her hat. Well, here, we don't have any money in our hat. We don't even have a hat to pull it out of. And so we're going to be waiting for that. The county has passed their budget, and that's the chart to my right. The budget that they passed was $3.586 billion. This represents a diagram of the county, the entire county budget. Now, you've all heard the spin about the Broward Sheriff's Office is 50% of the budget. First it was 50%, then I've heard 52%, and most recently I've heard a commissioner say it's 55% of the budget. Well, this tells the real picture. The entire county budget is $3.5 billion. The general fund part of the Broward Sheriff's Office is a little more than $400 million, and that represents the section on the left. So we would be 11.2% of the Broward County budget. If you take our entire budget, including contract cities, and that is revenue that comes to us, comes to the county from those municipalities. It's not paid for by the county taxpayer. That budget would be $700 million. Again, out of a $3.5 billion budget, if you want to go that way, take your choice, we would be 19% of the Broward County budget. So I really want to give everyone in the public a clear picture on what the real part of that budget is. Now again, I want to make it clear that, I feel that the Commission has spoken out of both sides of their mouth. On this hand, it was decreased the budget by $60 million. But at the same time, they've increased the budget by $10.7 million. That is yet to be resolved. Again, I'm encouraged by the progress, but the potential for an appeal does remain. The second thing we want to talk about today is...
Does the county have two sides of the budget, the operating and the capital, and does that $3.5 billion encompass the whole thing? And your $400 million is half of the operating?
Well, there's three parts of the budget if you're looking at it that way. It's salaries, operating, and capital.
Salaries, operating, and capital. Okay.
But there's certain revenue streams. One, what you're talking about, is property tax, and we're funded totally by property tax. But the county has other revenue other than property tax, which we don't share in.
But they can't commingle them, can they?
State funding. Well, state funding, bed tax, rental car tax, franchise fees. All of those other fees support the rest of the county budget. So I think it's for the public to look at is the entire budget. Because the Broward County budget is not funded solely by property tax. The Broward Sheriff's Office, we only have access to property tax. We don't have access to all those other sources of revenue that the county has for those other programs.
But just to be clear, like, you can't change money from your capital budget to your operating budget. They can't do that either, right?
Right. For us to do that, yes, we have to go before the commission to get permission to move it.
I mean, you're half of their general fund, and when you give the total budget, you're including things like the airport.
That's the entire county budget. And again, I want the public to know, because they hear the 50% number, and that's just spin. That's not an accurate picture of what portion the Broward Sheriff's Office is. Because when I go to public meetings and community meetings, you know, I hear that regurgitated back to me that, oh, you're 55% of the budget. Well, no, we're not. This is the accurate picture of what portion of the budget that we are. And the port and the airport, they're enterprise funds, obviously, but, you know, I think this is a more accurate picture of the county budget. We're not half of the entire county budget.
Are you still looking at the possibility of maybe closing down part of the jail in Pompano, or?
Well, I'm hoping we don't have to do that. In my last press conference, I said we had three options. Option number one was appealing to the Florida cabinet if they don't fund the $10.7 million. If that doesn't happen, then we would have to appeal it, and depending on what would happen there, the other two options would be closing the tower and sending the jails back to the county commission if they so choose.
So that's still on the table then?
Oh yes, those two options, depending on, you know, the first hurdle here.
So the budget has been finalized already. What exactly are you expecting it to happen on the 9th, or what do you want to happen?
Well, what has to happen is, like I said, they have to show us the money. That $10.7 million is unfunded. That is an unfunded mandate by the county commission. Again, we had an independent, third-party, unbiased arbitrator who listened to both sides. He took days to review the material. He listened to the same testimony that the county commission listened to. And he came to the decision that we were correct in our assessment of the financial situation. The county commission overruled that. So now that is an unfunded mandate that is not in our budget. That $10.7 million is not in the budget that they approved. And I have to tell you, is that day, on that Tuesday, I was under the assumption, because that's what I was told earlier in the morning, that the budget that they would approve would include that $10.7 million. The budget that they subsequently approved that night did not have the $10.7 million in it. So therefore, we're in this situation, we have a $10.7 million hole in our budget now, and we will also have it going forward, is that needs to be resolved on November the 9th.
What
so
services do those...
tell you, hey, this $10.7 million is going to come from here, Sheriff, you're going to go forward with the appeal process?
Yes. By the 8th, the appeal application will be completed, and on November 10th, we will deliver it to the Florida cabinet.
What do you want to say to the deputies in corrections right now? Because I know some of them have told us, well, you know what, we deserve this raise. The deputies working the streets were getting raises for years while we weren't getting anything. This is something we very much deserve.
Well, if I knew getting $10.7 million was that easy, I would have kept it in the budget and given them the raise myself. And that would have been a lot easier than what we're going through now. But on this hand, we had the demand to cut $60 million. And on the other side of it, they increased the budget by $10 million, 10.7.
I just want to clarify, the 10.7 million, you cut 60 million from your budget?
We ended up cutting 23. They asked for 60, we cut 23.
And so the 10.7, it comes from where? I'm sorry.
Well, that's the million-dollar question. Where is it coming from? Commissioner
What?
Rodstrom said it very clearly. Where is the money going to come from? There was no answer. Like I said, that night, I assumed from what they told me in the morning that it was going to be put in the budget before the budget was voted on. The budget was voted on without the 10.7 million. So we don't have an answer yet as to where it's coming from. That is supposed to be told to us on November 9th. Now, where they get it from is up to the county staff and the county commission to approve on November 9th. But what I'm looking for is that it's transferred into our budget on November 9th. If not, the appeal will be filed on November 10th.
What's your sense of how successful you could be? It hasn't been done in a very long time. What's your thought on it?
The success of the appeal?
Yeah.
Well, I feel very good about it. Again, we have a magistrate who basically wrote out pretty succinctly what his opinions were and concurred in this economy, and if you have to cut, you can't do that. So, I feel pretty good that they imposed it. They have to fund it.
And the 10.7 million would include the 3% raises, which is the retroactive part, as well as the 3% then also for the current fiscal year, right?
Correct. So, it's last fiscal year, the one we just finished, 5.3 million, 5.35, if you want to be technically accurate. And then for this current budget year that we just started, it's another 5.35 million.
So more than $5 million a year cost for these 3%
Yes.
raises.
So the total is 10.7 because we have to fund it retroactively and we have to fund it in the current budget. So it's going to take $10.7 million to make us whole in our budget.
Was the county commission using the figure like 3.5 million it would cost?
Well, that's what they're using if the Federation of Public Employees agrees to spread it out over 3 years, 1, 1, and 1. Then the impact would be 3.5 million that they would have to find. 1.75 last year, 1.75 this year.
And that hasn't been worked out yet.
No, we're still waiting on whether the employees are going to ratify that or not.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, Sheriff.
Thank you, folks.
Well, can you tell us anything about this rapist
I think the
case?
detective can talk.
The detective.
Detective.
Okay.
The detective's here.